The previous chapter ended with the potential for Josuke to get a major upgrade to his stand and its power, with his spinning lines making up his soap bubbles and having something that does not exist that resides within them. What this means, we are still not 100% certain on. However, now chapter 105 is out, we can finally see what happens next after Josuke fired his soap bubble at the end of chapter 104. This time the chapter moves away from the Endless Calamity name and is simply titled Invisible Soap Bubbles. If, by the end of this video, you feel like you've enjoyed my style of reviewing and discussing this chapter, and you haven't yet checked out my previous chapter reviews, feel free to check out the link to the JoJolion Chapter Reviews playlist in the description down below. I only started these chapter reviews at chapter 97, so I'm afraid there aren't a lot to check out as of yet. However, I do put a lot of effort into these videos to make them as good as can be for you all. So regardless of quantity, I hope the quality is enough for you to enjoy them and even potentially subscribe if you haven't already. Anyway, let's get on with the JoJolion Chapter 105 review and discussion. The cover of the chapter shows Josuke with his spinning soap bubbles shown on his finger. The last chapter ended with the same style of spinning soap bubble on his finger, pointing it directly at the Wonder of You, in the same stance as Johnny Joestar from part 7. I also find it really interesting how the soap bubbles are looking totally different now, with a very clear visual of the bubble spinning. Either Josuke's managed to upgrade his bubbles already and they look different due to that, or this is a visual change on Araki's part, as the readers now know they are spinning lines, so there's no need to hide the fact it spins. Then again, we found out they're spinning lines all the way back at chapter 70. However, it's only this current arc that we began finding out more about them, and that there are invisible things we cannot see inside them. Rai really is like a broken record. First, he repeatedly questions if Akefu Satoru really is 89 years old, and now, even in death, he's repeating the invisible things inside the bubbles line over and over again. Oh Rai, we do love you. Also on this cover page, the text reads, "Everything began on that day," with that equivalent exchange. This leads us straight onto the first page, where we enter a flashback to the scene of the earthquake that swallowed up both Josefumi and Kira. We receive a reminder of what happened during the scene where Josefumi admits Kira should live instead of him. As Josefumi feeds Kira the pieces of the new Rokakaka and the earthquake begins to swallow them both, Josefumi begs Kira to please save Holly and break the curse affecting her. As Josuke remembers this scene, Rai's words echo in his head once again. He informs Josuke that the soft soap bubbles of Soft and Wet combined with the explosive ability of Kira's Killer Queen, and within this fusion are things that cannot be seen. I can only assume that because these two abilities mixed together, it's been granted the ability to break the chains of logic that Tooru had implemented around Morio, whereas before, individually, the powers would not have been able to do that. Rai explains that the spinning lines of the fused Josuke's soap bubbles are so thin they're infinitely close to zero. In part 5, Golden Wind, Giorno attains the power of Gold Experience Requiem, which could reduce something to zero. And in part 7 we had Tusk Act 4, which could apply infinity to an enemy. This mix of Soft and Wet and Killer Queen is sounding like it might make use of both infinity and reducing things to zero. Zero exists, but basically seems like it is nothing. It's not even the first point in any given situation in the entire universe. 1 would be the starting point, where 0 would be absolutely nothingness. Yet, it is something. We know that nothing exists. The concept is real. Even if it means the absolute absence of anything in the whole universe, it is an understandable concept. Infinity, however, is a philosophical concept. What is infinity? Does it exist? Our concept of infinity is the unending quantity of knowledge, time, life, and so much more. But the proof of infinity's existence in itself does not exist. If Josuke were to mix 0 and infinity together, he would create something that exists, but also doesn't exist. Two related concepts that sit at entirely different ends of the scale to each other. This combination would create something that not only defies all logic, but this concept of existence and non-existence mixing together could create something new entirely. Something that goes far beyond transcending logic. Can you name one thing off the top of your head which we think we know about, but really we know almost nothing about? I'll give you a second. Got it? It's space. What is space? Well, it's in the name. It's a large, unending void that holds rocks, gases, fire, ice, and life. But that's about as far as our knowledge goes. In simple terms, the universe supposedly started at 0, and with the black void suddenly expanding at an alarming rate, made the Big Bang happen, creating everything we know so far in the universe. Of course, this is all a theory and is constantly being researched by astronomers. However, we can safely say the universe began at 0, yet it has the potential to be infinite. We only know a tiny fraction of space, and it's theorized that the universe continues to expand and expand and expand immensely over time. But how does this relate to Josuke? Well, my theory is, we've seen some rather OP stand abilities manifest in main characters in JoJo in the past. What if mixing 0 and infinity together, also keeping in mind the fact that Rai is now calling this the explosive spin, would give Josuke the ability to potentially create a whole new Big Bang? We know Araki has been rehashing some of his older ideas from the other universe spanning parts 1 through 6 of JoJo, and with how part 6 ended, the ending for JoJolion could potentially follow something very similar. Perhaps Josuke will recreate the universe, where he is able to erase the Higashikata curse from ever existing, also wiping out the existence of the curse affecting Holly, as well as bringing back Kei, Rai, and everyone else who has fallen victim to Tooru's calamity ability over the years. Of course, he will not know exactly how to do this yet, but it's possible he may be eventually able to do this, creating a new and better world for everyone he's ever known, where they can live happily and peacefully with their revived family and friends. Of course, this is all theorized, and I'm sorry that I often go off on huge theories and tangents like this, but the more I read what is written and the more I think about the possibilities, the more I need to get it out to you guys and share my thoughts with you. I mean, I theorized on my Tusk stand analysis video that Josuke would be able to utilize the spin eventually, and you guys went crazy when it later revealed Josuke to be using the spin that we know and love. So I'm calling it right now. Josuke will be able to create a new Big Bang or something very similar. Whether it's on the same scale as the Big Bang or if it'll be on a smaller scale, I don't know, but if this becomes a part of his power in the upcoming chapters, I know for a fact I'll be personally going crazy that I actually managed to call it correctly. Let me know your thoughts on this Big Bang theory that I've thought up here, and let me know if you have any other theories on this power as well. Hell, if you think my Big Bang theory is complete BS, let me know in the comments as well. I'd love to hear what you have to say and see all of your different theories. Anyway, now that is all out of the way, let's continue with the chapter. Rai states that these explosive spinning bubbles are the ones that are coming out of his star birthmark on his shoulder, and it seems they can even cross through solid objects like walls, considering the soap bubbles technically do not exist in this world, and in theory, they should be able to transcend the logic of the calamities. Josuke launches the shot from his finger at the Wonder Review, which the stand seems to easily block and deflect. Uttering the words Obladi Obladar, the Wonder Review echoes Tooru's earlier statement of safety first. As the soap bubble appears to sit inside an IV bag after it's been deflected, Josuke mentions that he felt something come out of the shoulder. It seems this something that came out of his birthmark are the bubbles which have the potential to break the chains of logic. These are the bubbles that could go through walls and transcend the calamities, rather than the ones Josuke fires from his fingers. And people brought to my attention in the last chapter review as well, that the soap bubbles that Josuke manifested from his star birthmark were the ones that had the plunder ability. The plunder ability in essence was able to take something away from something else. He could take away sound, he could take away vision, and he could even take away the slippery floors of a bathroom, for example. Josuke lines up another shot ready to fire at the Wonder Review, and again the stand repeats Obladi Obladar and claims it is the name of a second rock insect that he's been carrying around with him this whole time. I'm going to assume that Tooru collects rock insects and enjoys giving them weird names based off classic songs. If da-do-do-do-da-da-da-da wasn't weird enough, now we have Obladi Obladar, which I've struggled to type on this script every time so far. Suddenly, we see a circular rock embedded in the back of Josuke's shooting hand. Wonder Review explains that it is technically not an insect as it lacks the jointed legs and the correct body shape to be classed as an insect. It also mimics the appearance of a footprint, which leads me to believe it's a rock insect that hunts its prey by blending in with the environment around it, tricking its food into waltzing straight into its grasp. And I apologize to anyone who may have arachnophobia, look away now if you don't want to see a picture of a spider, just a warning ahead of time. The idea of Obladi Obladar blending into its environment to catch its prey off guard is very similar to the wraparound spiders. These spiders wrap around logs and tree branches to hide their body and then jump at prey when they get nearby. I've stopped showing spider pictures now, so feel free to come back if you did minimize the tab. It seems that once Obladi Obladar's latched onto its prey, it's near impossible to get it off. Even though Josuke is seen as a true threat to Tooru now, the calamity that befell Josuke was Obladi Obladar latching onto him, yet he still lives. However, we don't yet know at this page what Obladi Obladar is capable of, so it could still be potentially life-threatening. The calamity wasn't strong enough to instantly kill him, but Wonder of You warns him that if he pursues and attacks him again, he may not be so lucky. Josuke attempts to pull Obladi Obladar off of his hand, only to reveal that it has totally and completely latched onto him. Josuke can't pull it off without blood spurting everywhere, and when this happens, it appears the rock insect begins to multiply. As Josuke attempts to fire his soap bubbles at Obladi Obladar to try and remove it the hard way, Josuke experiences exactly the same thing as he has within this whole arc so far. The more you attack or pursue the head doctor or his rock insects, the worse the situation gets for him. And that's exactly what happens here. The pieces of Obladi Obladar fall, but land on Josuke's leg, and some of them move higher up his arm towards his neck as well. With the multiple Obladi Obladar rock insects sucking out Josuke's blood, he begins to lose strength and collapses to the floor. We shift back over to Yasuho's perspective as we see the falling plane panel getting ever closer to her, and we can clearly see it's headed directly for her. She puts her back towards the Higashikata house, and as she does this, the plane panel shifts its trajectory towards her once again. We now know for a fact that this calamity is heading for Yasuho. Not Tooru, not Joshu, Yasuho. I saw quite a few people theorizing that the plane panel might end up hitting Tooru instead, and having him die in a similar way to Kira in part 4, in the sense that it was an accidental death. I think I would be very unhappy with that though if that is how Tooru died, as I feel like we still have a lot to learn about his character. Plus, I do believe we do need to see a Josuke versus Tooru matchup face to face, now that he knows Tooru is the enemy stand user. As Tooru begins walking away with the new Rokakaka in hand, Joshu finally gets his, third attempt at redemption, and steps in front of Yasuho to protect her from the plane panel. The problem is, the panel is falling at such a high velocity, and with its size added into the equation, the panel will most likely slam straight into Joshu and go right through to squashing him and Yasuho against the wall anyway. Regardless though, if he actually does attempt to protect her, then he will have definitely jumped up a bit in my estimations. Josuke hears the commotion through the phone and warns her that she must take Paisley Park back to her main body to help protect her from the calamity. As Josuke speaks, Wonder of You presses the elevator button and continues his evacuation drill. Instead of bringing her stand back to her body for protection, Yasuho keeps Paisley Park near Josuke, using her power to enter the circuitry of the elevator to stop Wonder of You from escaping. She eggs Josuke on to fire yet another shot at the Wonder of You, and as he powers up the spinning bubble on his finger, a bubble yet again begins rising up from his star birthmark. Will this be the final shot? The plane door is almost right on top of Joshu and Yasuho. The time has to be now. Josuke needs to stand up and hit the Wonder of You with all he has. He needs to kill Tooru here and now and stop the calamity. Josuke gets up close and personal with the Wonder of You, intending to end it all with his explosive spin. Yet, the power to control this hidden ability is still not present. Obladi Obladar gets in the way and deflects the bubble in a different direction. The bubble completely misses the Wonder of You. Josuke had pursued the Wonder of You yet again, and failed yet again. This did nothing but further the calamity's progress on Josuke. This is now a calamity capable of killing him, as Obladi Obladar has spread far enough around his body to begin what looks like entering his body itself. Josuke collapses with no strength remaining in his body, and at the same time, Paisley Park quickly retreats back through the phone to head back to Yasuho. As the plane door is in its final few milliseconds of its descent, suddenly we see Paisley Park returning through the phone, carrying with it what looks like a soap bubble from Josuke's star birthmark. The soap bubble is launched from the phone using Paisley Park's power and heads directly at Tooru. Tooru looks at it, seemingly surprised, but to me his expression does not scream concern or worry, but rather more inquisitive. I really do hope this isn't the end of Tooru. As I've stated previously, I would like to see more of him and learn more about his character and motives. However, we might not get to see that, as this may or may not be his downfall. We won't find out until April, because JoJolion is going on another break for a whole month. I was so frustrated to hear this news, as this is a huge cliffhanger to leave the chapter on for a whole extra month longer than usual. However, I fully appreciate that Araki needs his breaks and more time to work on his compelling story. so I am happily prepared to wait for chapter 106, though, and I'm sure I speak for a lot of you, I will be waiting in complete suspense. Honestly, I thought this chapter was good, but there are a few points I'd like to bring up. From the preview we saw, we knew Josuke would be getting a flashback due to the earthquake panel in the top right corner, but I think a lot of the community expected something more than just a reminder of the Josefumi Kira fusion event. Some even theorized we may finally learn the identity of the mystery man in Josuke's memories from all the way back in chapter 4. Alas, it was purely a reminder of the Josuke fusion and the earthquake. This was a little underwhelming, but I realise it is necessary for Araki to remind us of things like this now and again to then link upcoming plot points to the event shown in the flashback. Especially since the fusion was initially shown in chapter 53, which is over 50 chapters ago, and that was released almost 5 years ago. Another point I'd like to make is, this chapter almost felt like it made zero progress. Almost nothing happened. Every shot that Josuke fired off against the Wonder Review was redirected, and the only thing we saw of Yasuho was that the plane door is getting closer and closer. I feel like the only piece of story progression we had was Rai naming Josuke's bubbles as possessing an explosive spin. Plus of course the soap bubbles that were sent through the phone towards Tooru. Other than that, and of course Obladi Obladar being the calamity to befall Josuke this time round, I feel like this chapter did not really forward the story all that much. As we saw from the plane door, it was incredibly close to Yasuho at the start of this chapter, and by the end of it, it still hadn't hit her, so not much time had actually progressed in the story during this 45-page chapter. Other than that, I thought this chapter was pretty good as it's continuing to build up the tension and the worry that someone else may yet die. If my previous theory about Josuke being able to recreate the Big Bang, and in turn recreate the universe, or at least planet Earth, is correct, then if loads more characters continue to die, there'd be hardly anyone left. That wouldn't be a very happy ending to the story. I know a very similar thing happened in part 6, but we still got a happy ending with the remade universe. We've had many main character deaths in JoJo, but in most JoJo parts there are still usually a few main characters remaining. Jobin, Rai, and Kei are dead, and we don't know yet about Norisuke. I have no idea what might happen. Hell, the flash forward that we saw still showed Norisuke in a body bag. Although, characters like Joshu were still alive, but Jobin was nowhere in sight, neither was Kei or Yasuho. I have no idea what might happen though, as this Big Bang Theory is just a theory of a theory after all. Have I said the word theory enough yet? However, that's where I'll be leaving it for now. What did you think of chapter 105? What do you think of my Big Bang Theory? If you disagree, what do you think Rai meant by Josuke's bubbles are spinning infinitely close to zero? Let me know your ideas and theories down in the comment section. Also, at the end of this video, I'm going to have an annotation on screen taking you to the chapter 104 review and discussion video. If you haven't already seen that video, feel free to click the annotation and go check it out. There'll also be 2 more annotations on screen, possibly linking to stand analysis videos or other JoJolion related content. For the next 2 months though, let's pray that Yasuho survives this plane door, and Josuke survives Obladi Obladar. If you enjoyed this video, then it'd be great if you could leave a thumbs up on it down below and maybe even subscribe to keep up to date with regular uploads and stand analysis videos. Thank you so much for watching, but until next time, Bizarre Star Platinum out.